Welcome back, everyone. So in this video we're going to be talking about variables, but just real quick, if you like this dark theme, just click Windows here, Preferences, General, Appearance, and then you'll see it there. You might have to restart Eclipse when you select that, if it's the first time you've done it. If it turns white like this, sometimes you just have to hit Enter and it'll go back to the colors that it's supposed to be. So variables, what are variables? How do we use them? What are they for? Basically, you can think of variables as like a bucket, and we're going to store information in those buckets. And in Java is what's called a strongly typed language, which means that each type of variable has its own data type. So we have strings, chars. Char is just short for character. Integer, double, float, boolean. There's also longs, shorts, some others, but we'll get into those in other videos. This is just kind of like a quick overview of the different types. And how do we assign these? How do we declare these variables and then assign them? So variable declaration is just the data type and then the name that you want it. And so you can just say, like we can say string, my string, and then just put a semicolon, and that's declaration. We're saying, hey, put this into memory, and this is what we're going to call it. Then assigning that variable is where you have the equals and then whatever is on the right side. So for our name and best practices, you want to name the variable what it's going to be used for. So when you're looking at the code, when you're reading the code, you come across it and you say, okay, name, obviously that's holding somebody's name. If I just said my string, then we wouldn't have a clue as to what that is later on. And the reason why you want to name these things where they're clear, where it gives an understanding of what it's used for, is because you're going to write stuff and then come back to it weeks or months later, and it's not going to be as clear as when you were initially writing it if you don't use naming conventions that are clear and kind of give an idea of what it's used for. So that's just kind of a breakdown. I know that I've kind of broken that here with my int and my double and my float, but this is just for I guess explaining the difference of what these data types do, not necessarily what I would use in an actual program. So I would never type my int in a program where I'm using an integer. I'd always try to use what it's used for. So just kind of giving you an idea, we have these, this is what's called concatenation, where you have a string and then you have plus and then the variable, and we're actually doing some math right here. It's going to calculate that, and then it's going to put it into this string, and that's called concatenation. And then we're concatenating another string at the end. And so when we run this, what we're going to see is it's not going to say age / my double, but it's actually going to take age, which is 10. It's going to divide that by my double, which is 3. And then it's going to print that calculation out on the screen. And we see that we have 16 decimal places. So I've done this just to kind of highlight a little bit of the difference between some of these data types. So a double and a float, you see that the float is the same thing. It's got decimal places, but it's only got 7. So you would want to use the double, and most of the times people just use double anyway because memory is cheap, and most modern computers don't really have a hard time when it comes to needing memory resources. But the reason why it was used, or it was created, was because at some point you need like the computer can't hold an infinite amount of data. At some point it has to cut it off. like it shows here, 16 decimal places for the double, 7 for the float. And then there's certain mathematical and science related situations where 7 decimal places is just not good enough. We need more precision in that, and so that's where this double came into place to add more precision with those calculations. So this is just kind of giving you a rough overview of that. Integer division shows the 3, and then all the decimal just gets completely cut off. It's not rounding down. Even if this was 3.999, it would still only show 3, because it's going to cut all that decimal section off and completely, toss it in the trash can. And technical term for that is truncation. So that whole decimal portion has been truncated, and then all you're left with is that whole value number. So it's not a rounding down or a rounding up. It's just taking that whole number and throwing away everything else. And then the Boolean type can be true or false. And here we have it false. So in an if statement, we have if, and then we're checking, hey, what is this, true or false? If it's true, it's going to run this first one, but we have it set to false. So what it does is it comes down here and it grabs the second one. So if we set this to true, and then we run it again, and the way I'm running this, so you can either click this green button or you can hit F11, and that'll run the program for you. And so here we see that it's true. So, and we'll get all into these in much more detail as the tutorial progresses. We'll be building some stuff and doing some small programs that kind of help you understand how these are. And I'm going to repeat a lot of this stuff as we get going. So that's just how I believe learning takes place, is just through repetition. You hear things over and over and over again before they really sink in, and you kind of have that aha moment. So this is just kind of like a rough overview of variables. Just one last thing about the difference. You see here, string is actually blue and these others are orange. The orange ones are what are called primitive data types. So they're I guess used in just from all the original languages, but the blue data type here is actually a Java class. If you see over here, system is blue, and our class that we declared at the very beginning, this tutorial 1, is blue. So anytime you see a class, it's going to be in this blue color, and that's what string is. It's a Java class, and so with that, there's a lot of functionality that comes with that class. You have different methods, and we'll get into those methods later on. And Java has also done that with a lot of these other data types. So we could actually do double capital D, my other double, and we could just say, and so that would basically do the exact same thing. And then with that, it would give us, so if we run this again, we're still going to get the same thing, the same output, but with this type of variable, because we're declaring a class that is part of the Java language, now we have certain features, certain methods that the primitive data type does not have. So that's just kind of the difference for that. So we'll get into this more in other videos. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.